So thank you for joining us, everyone, today for today's webinar, AI Ethics and its Impact on Knowledge Management. We at KMI love to do any of these webinars, anything to do with knowledge management, but especially AI and AI ethics. And we have the pleasure of having it's hosted by Dr. Anthony Rhem, who is a longtime partner of KMI's. He's our instructor for the Information Architecture Certification Program. We teach that on a pretty regular basis. It's also available as an e-learning course at KM Institute. If you go to kminstitute.org, you'll see more information on that, as well as our free webinars. Just go to the webinars section, and you'll see all of our past webinars and what's coming up. But without further ado, let me hand it over to Dr. Rhem, and I'll let you take over, sir, and thank you for hosting today.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me and able to participate on this platform, which I think is fantastic, to get speakers out here and talk about different areas of knowledge management that really resonate with your audience. So I am Dr. Anthony Rhem, and what I'm going to talk to you about today is AI ethics and how that really is impacting the decisions that are being made with AI. And we know over the last several years that AI and KM are starting to merge together to deliver knowledge in a more personal and a way that really geared toward making decisions at a tactical level. So I'm going to go through the presentation. I think we're going to be, well, we will have a question and answer session after the webinar. So you guys can feel free to hold your questions till then, and go forward from there.
Yeah, and Tony, real quick before I sort of fade out, just a reminder that folks can use the chat box. If you do have a question throughout the presentation, go ahead and enter it into the chat, and Tony will be good to check that before he finishes for the Q&A session. And then as far as your view, for those of you who are still somewhat new to Zoom, we do recommend using the speaker view. If you look at the top right corner of your screen, I think you have the options for gallery or speaker. Speakers usually are go-to for these. So then you'll have Tony in a little box, and his presentation should take up the full screen for you. But again, any questions, just please use chat, and we'll check back with that later in the presentation. And thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Tony.
Great, fantastic. So a little bit about me. Eric did let you guys know I am involved with KMI. I've been involved with KMI since 2006. Great organization, and I'm very happy to be able to teach the Information Architecture Certification class. A little bit about my background. I am the current CEO, principal consultant of, I have a consulting practice. It's a small business focused on AI and knowledge management, but we do consulting, training, and research. And we have primary offices in Chicago. And my background is pretty varied, right? I've been in IT for over 30 years. I'm not going to say how many, it's well in the 30s. And so my experiences range from artificial intelligence, started AI back in the late 80s. So that you can imagine what that looked like back then. And moved into KM in the late 90s, moved back into AI as I saw AI and KM kind of merging together, moved back into AI about 7 years ago, doing more of the machine learning aspect of it. And I do have a background in blockchain, IoT, and things like that, and I've worked with a number of organizations across several industries, whether it's retail or legal or banking, insurance, government. So I've been around doing quite a few things. And so I've also am an author. I've written a few books, and I do speak at different conferences, not just in the US, but in Europe as well. So that's been so a little introduction. AI and ethics and its impact on knowledge management is actually an article, a thought piece that I wrote, and it was published in the AI and Ethics Journal recently. AI and Ethics Journal is also where I'm participating as a founding member of the editorial board. So I also one of the folks that will be participating in peer reviewing of journal entries, articles for the journal. And so that journal has given me a platform to not only participate in groundbreaking and thought pieces and research from the AI community, but also give me a platform to write as well. And so in that article, I actually focus on a few areas, incorporating AI into KM, which is something that's I see has been happening over the last several years. Talk about the delivery of knowledge, which is very important. Then it moves into ethical issues in that delivery of knowledge. So there's if it's AI involved, there are going to be the possibility that you are going to deal with certain ethical issues in delivering that type of application in anywhere, even when it's blended with KM as well. So then that article talks about some applications, the ethicality of those applications, and then also having a people-centered, a human-centered approach to AI. So that, for details on that article, go right to the AI and Ethics Journal and look for AI and Ethics and its impact on knowledge management, just to give you guys a basis for where this discussion is based on. So at the end of the day, what are we talking about? We know that knowledge management, the basis of knowledge management is something that enables you to collaborate, share, create, and use knowledge, right? So it has a lot of different aspects to that. And the major thing, I think, from KM is to enable people to improve their performance by accessing knowledge faster and more efficiently, getting to the things that you need to have to execute a task, and work with people to deliver a product or service. And so at the end of the day, we know that KM really is a catalyst for innovation. Eric talked earlier about knowledge cafes, and that's another aspect of that intense sharing mechanism to increase opportunities for innovation. And so knowledge management really plays a key role in that. And at the end of the day, from the aspect of delivering knowledge, it's a few aspects that I have pointed out in numerous previous conversations and working with organizations. So the knowledge must be dynamic. We'll get into more of this later, accurate and personal. And so to get down to that tactical level delivery of knowledge to actually get something done. And so now we want to enter AI. Entering AI. So when your knowledge is empowered with artificial intelligence, and we're really speaking machine learning to infuse the knowledge management platforms in that delivery of knowledge. And so artificial intelligence allows the machines to process and use the knowledge to help you perform the task. It enables that personal delivery of knowledge. So that is one of the key things for artificial intelligence, and it really enables you to look at the vast landscape of knowledge within your organization and deliver it to you in a way that makes sense and really focused on what you want to accomplish. And so it's really important in the digitalization of knowledge to have a AI mechanism to help you deliver those key pieces to actually perform your job the way you want to and need to. And at the end of the day, I know that AI, and through different mechanisms we'll talk about, I like to say it scales the volume and effectiveness of knowledge distribution. Because you have a vast ecosystem of knowledge within your organization, and you want to be able to scale that in a way that more people have more access to that corporate knowledge. So now with understanding the basis that we know for KM, understanding that basis and where AI will help infuse that, we then move on to some of the ethical aspects of that. Okay, if you have AI that's going to help deliver knowledge or deliver decisions, then there's some things within AI that you must be aware of when you put those two together. And also in AI in general. So that's the other aspect of this. So I like to start with an understanding for ethical artificial intelligence, understanding of just the major areas, what I call the pillars of ethical AI. And, these all make sense, right? You want the application to be trustworthy. So it means the AI, the outcomes produced by the AI application, that people are comfortable with those decisions. They have no issue about trusting what those decisions are, and really understanding that the AI is benefiting them. So, but it's a path of getting there that really is important. How do you get to be trustworthy? And we'll talk about that too. Because one of the things to be trustworthy is to be able to peel back the onion of that application. And so at the end of the day, you want it to be explainable. Explainable talks about how did the AI algorithm come to that decision, and being able to trace that outcome within the AI application. That's extremely important. It goes back to my days in the early 90s, developing expert systems, rule-based systems, and we actually program rules and be able to what we call trace the rules from when one rule is fired. Why was that fired? What situation caused that to execute that rule? What did that rule also fire based on those of that information, and be able to trace through to see, okay, well, that data should not have been accessed, or this path should not have been taken, and start to tweak it and make it more efficient and built in a way that is expected by the business and what the outcomes should be. So from that early days in the early 90s development expert systems, now you move to machine learning, where this is pretty much automatic based on the data that you use to train the algorithm with. So having the ability to explain that path is taken is extremely important, and it also lends to that area of saying, okay, I can trust the AI decisions that have been identified by executing the AI application. So that's extremely important to be able to do that. The other pieces, which you can pretty much know that it has to be there. It has to be unbiased. You hear a lot about right now facial recognition applications and the data points in the facial recognition to determine if what that person profile may be, and a lot of government agencies that around the world have been using facial recognition. Some of them have stopped because of the bias that is inherently in the data that the application is using based on the data points captured in the facial recognition program. So they pretty much have to go back to the development piece, back to the data itself and build from scratch to make sure that the bias is removed. So that's just the tip of the iceberg there. And at the end of the day, we want to have responsible use and design. That the facial recognition thing situation goes back to responsible use, right? So you want your applications to be unbiased, and you want to be able to know that these applications are being used in an ethical way. So following these 4 pillars will help in establishing an ethical base for your AI applications, and that AI applications delivery of knowledge. So it plays hand in hand, because when AI applications make a decision, then that's knowledge that is given to the user to act. And so we want to make sure you follow that train all the way through and making sure that it's unbiased and it's ethically used. I'm pretty sure you guys probably have a lot of questions around that in itself. So ethical AI, we talked about the pillars, but now we talk about implementing that. Because there's one thing to say, okay, we want trustworthy, we want explainable, we want it to be unbiased. Oh, that's great, fantastic. But now, how do you really put that into action, right? So it's a lot, especially being involved in a couple of AI ethics programs. It's a lot of thought leadership that talks about ethics and what we have to do and how we need to incorporate them, but not as much in the actual implementation execution. But more and more people are stepping up to understand how we do that. So I participated with the AI Policy Exchange. I'm also a member of that group, and worked with them and on one of their I don't say webinars that they put together, and kind of asked the question, how do you implement AI ethics? And so in that conversation, I approached it in this way. The first thing you will need to have is an AI policy and standard. In the AI and policy and standard, you have to have details on how to address the ethicality of AI and remove bias from your data. I mean, the standards form almost like the roadmap, the details of that. Then in having that, I really truly believe in having a diverse AI development team. Now, the diverse team will consist of not only cultural diversity, but knowledge diversity, because we want to have the team to be able to look at data, look at the algorithm models to say, okay, some of these models or data present some societal risk and bias. So let's, even before we start developing, remove that from the equation, right? So we're looking at data, and we're also looking at how the algorithm is going to be designed, and to make sure we remove as much as we can that bias. Because if you have different people, and this is one of the things about knowledge management that's really successful, is you get a group of people together to share what they know and to evolve and grow that base of knowledge. Same thing with developing AI applications and removing bias and making it more ethical, is to get that diverse team together, different backgrounds, the things that you may not have thought about because you're not really exposed to certain things, but together you will increase that pool of knowledge to be able to address those societal issues that you may not even know were there. And because at the end of the day, we all have inherent bias in what we do. I mean, it's just human nature. But if when you look at data and you're looking at delivering an application, delivering knowledge to people to act on, you really have to think about the impact of that. And having a diverse team helps you tackle that. The other thing is having a human-centered approach. So think about the person or people that you're affecting, and make sure you adopt a position of fairness, position of unbiasedness, and that is also should be identified in your AI policy and standard. You know, a lot of this is taken from your AI policy and standard. So that human-centered approach is very important. And you go back, I mentioned earlier, about using a variety and a volume of curated, unbiased data. So the data is the key when you train these algorithms, and going back with your diverse team, understand what data you need to include in the training of the algorithm, removing as much bias and understanding what data sets are really necessary to be able to help make decisions, what those data sets, how they are labeled, and to be able to train the algorithm in a certain way. You don't want the algorithm to have biased data, and it will perpetuate that biasness even more within its training. It'll say, oh, every time I see this data point, oh, I'm going to act this way, and this way is detrimental to a certain group. It's going to continue to do that unknowingly, because it's doing exactly what it's trained to do. And so if you remove that from the data, then it will be trained to be more ethical, more fair with its outcome. But see, the implementation doesn't stop there. Doesn't begin or stop there. And that's when it's in production, in flight, is moving, and it's actually doing work. But before you get there, there are steps, right? There are steps to remove that bias, right? So one, again, the data, that's the key. Start with the data even before the algorithm is even developed. The next thing is looking at the algorithm to make sure it is transparent and explainable. And that's going through working with your development team, going through the actual model and understanding the different paths the algorithm will take, and then removing those paths that will produce unethical or biased results. And that's, that takes some work. And if you've ever been involved with code reviews and things like that for developers, that's something that you would address at that point. The other piece is which is in any software development effort, you want to get user feedback. In any KM application, when you have some customer-facing knowledge and you like self-help information for your customers, and a lot of times you will have a rating system. That you see that you rate this piece of knowledge. Was it helpful? 1 to 5 stars, whatever you rate it. And so it's the same thing as you develop the AI applications. So you get that user feedback. So the user feedback is looking at the application in a certain way. One is the decisions, are the decisions being made from this application, are they fair? Are they ethical in nature? Do the application decisions, are the application decisions being made, are they odd to you? Do they seem like the decisions, veer a certain way? So that's getting the user feedback in actual execution. It's just akin to any testing, user testing that you would do for application. And you're really looking at precisely the results and that's being delivered by the AI application. So that getting the user feedback is key. So that is some of the steps that you would take from the data to the explainable and transparency, to the diverse team, and getting the user feedback. So those are some of the steps that you take to implement ethical AI. I'm pretty sure we have a lot more conversation around that as well. Okay, let me go to the next thing here. Now that we've talked about a little more from the pillars to the implementation of the ethical AI, now we are going to talk about more that infusion of AI and KM and the actual delivery of knowledge, right? So we have this flow from knowledge creation, knowledge transfer, the use of that knowledge, then how that knowledge flows throughout your organization from one person to the next, how it's captured in explicit format to be accessed by other people, and how it's governed, right? You want to manage and maintain that knowledge, and then the cycle continues. And so in each part of the cycle, we have some touch points, right, for ethical AI. So in the knowledge creation, and when you have an algorithm involved in the knowledge creation, you want to make sure that it's unbiased data is fed into that algorithm, and that algorithm is trained to discover new knowledge based on what the user is looking for. So if I'm for instance, if I'm at a client, okay, let me give this story some background. Say I work for one of the big 5 consulting companies. It could be just a smaller consulting company, but at the end of the day, I'm at a client, but I want to be able to tap into the collective knowledge of my organization. And say I'm at this client, I'm asked to do a knowledge management strategy. And say this is insurance. Oh, I'm an insurance client. I'm asked to do a knowledge management strategy for this insurance client. And so where do I start? Let me tap into the collective knowledge of my organization and say, okay, I type in knowledge management strategy. Where do I start? So the system would take that from a natural language processing perspective. You type it in, in the search bar, whatever, what you want. So the AI application would take that information and say, key off knowledge management strategy. How do you create one? And so it will bring back potentially, now this is a scenario, bring back templates on how to develop the strategy. It'll bring back examples from the insurance industry on how different strategies were developed from that particular organization, and it should tie it to the experts who actually developed those type of strategies before. And so the AI application, knowing what you need and understanding that, will bring back those pieces that you need in order to execute that particular job. So that's the background of what the AI application will be doing in bringing that knowledge to you. And it may even, when we talk about discovering new knowledge, it will also bring back knowledge that you may not have thought of, because it will look at the relationships between certain aspects of what you asked for. Insurance, they may even bring back financial strategies or some other thing that is similar to that. And so those are the other pieces that the AI application helping you discover new knowledge for what you need to deliver will bring to you. So that has to start from a unbiased data perspective. We don't want the application to all of a sudden always bring back a certain insurance strategy created by a certain individual in a certain area of insurance. So that doesn't bring a more holistic view. And so AI applied that way eliminates certain bias towards certain industry, a certain way, certain person have done things in the past. That's another type of bias, right? Geared toward a certain aspect of a certain area of your organization done a certain way, instead of broadening the knowledge delivery to look at other areas that relate to it. So those are the type of things we're looking at as well when we talk about the bias in the data. So knowledge transfer. Algorithms used to enable knowledge to be, we talked about before, dynamic, accurate, and personal. And the transfer and sharing of knowledge must be trustworthy, unbiased, and explainable. Again, just basic things we talked about before. Trustworthy, unbiased, and explainable. It's all about understanding that. And just say, hey, if I'm getting knowledge from the application, from the system that I need to execute it, to do my job, or I'm learning how to do a new task, I want to make sure that it's accurate, and we'll talk about that more. Knowledge governance makes sure it's maintained properly, so we know it's accurate, and it's personal to what I need to accomplish. So we don't. This is when you shrink that universe of knowledge and deliver something very personal to the individual user. So knowledge use. Knowledge use is a result of search, chatbots, predictive analytics. So how you using the knowledge could be, and there's quite a few search engines out here, as you guys know, and so a lot of search engines talk about being semantic, leveraging semantic search capabilities, and that's bringing it more accurate and personal into the search piece. And we want to make sure that those results that the search engine gives you are trustworthy and able for you to use to execute your job. Chatbots. How many? I know a lot of you guys have interacted with chatbots. You go to just by any site. I had a pretty good experience with working with a chatbot to when I was buying a new laptop last year, and I was interacting with the chatbot and just putting out, hey, I want this, I want that in my on my computer. I need this much meg. I need this speed processor, and it was good in giving me options. And then the chatbot, then when it kind of went beyond its capabilities, automatically moved me to a chat with a live person. So to me, that was good, because I was getting to a point where, this is okay, but I'd probably be faster talking to a person. And so what the chatbot was able to do was take the information that I put in through our 10-minute session, have it sent to the person that it automatically moved me to. And that person already had that information and was able to come on to the chat directly with that person and be able to give me what I needed and give me a better deal because of what I wanted. They had some other specials going on that even bumped some of the things up that I wanted, and for a more reasonable price. So that chatbot really helped. Sometimes, well, what we're moving toward in this AI world with knowledge delivery is that we're removing the human from the loop, which I'm not a big fan of, because based on the other situation I had with the delivering of that, putting that laptop order together to help do some predictive analytics to say which, if the AI application is done very well, predictive analytics, what it does is learns how you work, will learn what you do, and if you work with a system long enough, because the one thing about AI applications, machine learning, they need a lot of data. You keep learning. And after a while, it will just recommend or predict what you need and deliver that to you, or say, hey, the typical model, like Amazon, Google, hey, you bought this, so you may be interested in these things, so to speak. So that's low-level predictive analytics. From a higher level predictive analytics, it would produce those results, but also push things to you that it feels that based on your interaction with the system that you need. I don't know if you guys have experienced anything, any situations from your Siri or your Google Home, or even your phone. My phone has Alexa. If it's in listening mode and it hears what you do all the time, and I mean, try to turn that listening mode off. It learns what you're doing, and it was funny because I was talking to my wife and we were talking about songs, and for my 20 minutes. And then I said, man, what's that song that has started with such and such and such and such? Then Alexa said, you want to play blah, 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 blah. I said, wait a minute. I didn't say Alexa play so-and-so, but it was listening. And it played the song that I was thinking about. I couldn't remember the title. And so I'm like, that's spooky. So what I did, I just say, turn that listening mode off. But I've had a situation where the phone will automatically dial somebody if you talking about them or something, and saying their name, they automatically dial. Then you want to call so and so. No, I don't want to call anybody. So that's that predictive analytics. It's listening. It's learning. So those are the things that you need to be very, very careful of. Okay, I guess I digress a bit. The other piece here in the knowledge flows is AI and predicting trending knowledge areas, topics within the flow. In one, we talked about the use of it in individual basis. But then if you think about how the knowledge flows within your organization from one person to another person to another person, and you want to make sure that those topics and knowledge is flowing to the right people in the right areas as well. It's akin to you guys talk about knowledge graphs or knowledge maps, understanding the interconnectedness of knowledge across your organization. Who are the people that know certain things? Who's connected to who? They use a bit of social network analysis in that understanding of that network to see who is being touched by the certain flow of certain types of knowledge. So understanding how that is done too with your AI is important, because that is reflective in search. More higher level search engines will use ontologies, which actually map out the different terms and meanings, which would be a layer on top of understanding how the knowledge is flowed throughout your organization, and actually build that map or graph of how that works. So AI applications are using that type of knowledge or data to help distribute the flow of knowledge in a certain way. And so you want to make sure that those algorithms are doing the right things and sending you to the right places. And at the end of the day, all of this great stuff, we want to be able to manage and maintain it. The worst thing we can do is have all of this built and fine-tuned, working fantastic. The minute new knowledge is introduced, it's not managed. It's not put into the ecosystem correctly to be able to be a part of how the knowledge flows, part of that predictive analytics, part of that knowledge discovery. We want to be able to manage and maintain all the knowledge and its relationships. Some applications that we're moving to somewhere with a higher level artificial intelligence and enables that new introduction to knowledge to be automatically tagged and associated within the ontology of your knowledge base. So those are things that we got to make sure are ethical and unbiased in its connections, and at the end of the day, trustworthy. We want to be able to trust what we're finding, trust what we're using, trust the knowledge that we're being gained from the applications. So that's where these are the pieces of where AI and KM come together, and some of the things we need to understand from a ethical nature. I know that's quite a bit to unpack there, but I'm pretty sure you guys will have a lot of questions around that. And so I've talked about a little bit of this, and this is some examples of AI-infused KM. We talked about predicting trending knowledge area topics that the workers, your employees or any user need to perform a task and make decisions. We talked about, if we go from the top left to right, identifying which target knowledge will resonate with your users. And this is based on real-time engagement and content consumption. Real-time, the AIs in the background, and understanding what your staff would need to get their job done. The other piece is, we talked about the personalization of knowledge based on individual needs and wants and their preferences. The other piece is, on the far left, improve content decisions. And so using machine learning to help with that, and understanding what content is needed to address the situation in the best way. It's akin to what we talked about earlier, understanding if I'm a consultant and need to build a strategy, understanding deliver me the type of knowledge I need to build that strategy with. So that sort of thing. AI will make search and the search products more relevant, precise, and efficient. Search engines are evolving quite a bit, and I am participating in KM World Connect, and I'm presenting a piece within the AI and KM landscape track that talks about some technologies that are enabling AI and KM merging together, and some of the advances in search I've identified as well with some companies that are really prevalent in the search area. And so look out for organizations like, for instance, Noonan's Cybernetics. They are a startup that is producing some amazing results in knowledge-centered search engine applications. Get you right down to the answer, which is amazing. So search engines like that are being developed. The other piece is AI through intents will enable you to better know what content your knowledge workers need. So intents is it's a higher form of natural language processing, right? It understands the intent of what you want to find. My first introduction to intents were back in 2015, working with the Oracle KM product that leverages Inquirer search engine, and it has rule-based intents built into the search engine that will fire based on what you've typed in, and has a natural language processing piece that is supported by those rule-based intents. So that's another piece that is interesting and has evolved over a number of years as well, to help a person find the content and leverage the content that they need. And also chatbots. Chatbots are exploding. So the one thing, well, actually two things that chatbots are actually incorporating is better natural language processing and better machine learning. And so we talked about Siri and Google Home and Alexa. All those are chatbots, right? And all those digital assistants are getting better and better at learning what you do, understanding what you say. You translate that to the chatbots that you work with on different sites, and so that technology is evolving in those platforms as well. So all of these are examples where AI is delivering that knowledge in a more precise, intuitive, sometimes scary way, in order for you to make decisions and do things in a more expedited nature. Sometimes they probably are annoying, but this is the technology is constantly getting better. So I'm pretty sure you guys have questions around those pieces. I may even have your own experiences and examples of things you've used and with AI and delivering that type of knowledge for you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, as I continue on, it's kind of interesting, in this format, you don't have that person jumping up and raising their hands and interrupting you if different questions, don't have that give and take, but I'm looking forward to that later. So AI and KM implementation. So we talked about where this is going. One of the paradigms, I guess this is my major paradigm that I've been pushing and working with companies on the last few years. Actually, I participated in the KM showcase back in March. That's the last event I was actually physically at, right? The first week in March. And I did a presentation on knowledge as a service implemented through the digital workplace. Now, I was working with an organization to help them deliver a digital workplace application as part of the digital strategy, and I brought this whole concept of knowledge as a service. So at the end of the day, this is the platform where knowledge management AI comes together and deliver knowledge to the users in a more enhanced way. Like I talked about the predictive understanding, tying the tacit and explicit knowledge together, from when you search for the strategy piece and understand who has actually developed those strategies, all those connections, ontologies and things like that are all part of that knowledge as a service framework. Now, the other paradigm, I want you guys to get a chance to Google this and look for cognitive digital twins. And that's the aspect of mimicking everything from the physical world into the digital world. So it's all about building complete new generation of smart machines that can deliver knowledge. This is moving up the food chain. Everything connected, digitally delivering knowledge. It's trying to, I guess, moving toward mimicking the physical world in a digital format and moving everything to a digital format. And so at the end of the day, everything digitally connected services which can be consumed by machines and humans. So this is IoT. It is you interacting with it. It's everything connected. So that is there's quite a few seminars and organizations pushing cognitive digital twins. So if you get a chance, look that up. And even further down the stream here is augmented intelligence. Okay, we have AI, which is one thing, but then augmented intelligence actually says we're going to blend the human and the machine. So and it's more what I talked about before, keeping the human in the loop. So this is really about that machine assisting the human delivering something very intertwined. So it's focused on AI assistive role and enhancing human intelligence rather than replacing it. Because we know with AI, a lot of AI applications, the goal is to replace the human from lower level tasks. We could do that automatically. Like if you working with robotic process automation, intelligent automation, that's one of the goals for RPA. But augmented intelligence is actually to work together. One of the augmented intelligence applications is ID authentication, authenticating who that person is. You go to different places, and you have to put your ID in or fingerprint, whatever. That augmented intelligence really scans that and say, okay, it looks through the database, matches or not matches, and it helps the person, security person, determine who should be let into the facility. So it's things like that. That's one of the things that come to mind with augmented intelligence. So let me go further here. We just mentioned robotic process automation or intelligent automation. It's in customer order processing, it's payroll processing, form processing, any of those jobs that are really regimented and have precise steps that can be done. And when you're implementing RPA, you have to think of, hey, I am implementing an electronic person. I have to give that electronic device all the security rights that person would have, and enable that electronic person to be able to do his job, fill out forms, submit the form, access the form, all these things. And so I know I worked with one organization that, the robotic process is mimicking this person that will be doing this job. And so what they did was, okay, the developers gave all the rights to that bot that person doing that job had. Just blanketly did it, right? Figure, oh, well, that person does this job, the robot does the job, it needs all these privileges. But we found out that the person or people in that role had other privileges that went beyond just doing the forms. And they inadvertently gave the bot other access that it did not need. And we found it out in testing. And so that's one of the things you need to be mindful of. That's when we talk about understanding the data, making sure it's ethical, making sure it's the right data needed for the AI application. And not just, okay, it makes sense if that bot is doing that job, it should have the same rights and privileges as that person doing the job. Sure, but you better make sure you have the rights for that bot specifically just for that task. So those are things that easily overlooked, but something that we all must be mindful of. Again, the other piece is we talk about digital assistants with natural language processing, machine learning. We touched on that. Chatbots, as we know, helps with employees, your vendors, your customers make critical decisions. With an NLP and a machine learning, it gives these bots more cognitive capabilities. One platform I'm intimately familiar with and worked with quite a bit is the IBM Watson Digital Assistant platform, which is really pretty cool because it has a environment to start to build your chatbots and add that type of capabilities iteratively to the bot. And it's easy to immediately test it and development, testing and development. It's really a nice enclosed platform to be able to build bots and deliver bots and add this type of functionality to them, and you can gradually test, which is great because that's some built-in efficacy there to remove bias and make sure that bot is actually doing the things it needs to do. Again, and natural language processing and search, NLP search. That's the other areas where, going more semantic searching, understanding language. And so that is another area where AI and CAM are coming together to deliver value. Okay, so let's look at some key points to consider. Now that we've heard me going through all of this stuff, let's kind of boil it down to some things that we want to kind of take out of here. So I got here, it's imperative that AI is applied to deliver knowledge for people to make decisions, which we went over quite a bit. And so one, we want that knowledge to be without bias, right? And decisions are made and used ethically. You want the data, which is extremely important, used in training of algorithms to be unbiased. We got to start from the data perspective before the algorithm even gets to it. The algorithm is modeled and designed without bias and explainable. It's trustworthy. Can I explain why I did certain things? We must keep in mind that when it comes to AI, we need both responsible use and responsible design. Responsible use, we can look at the example of the rogue RPA bot, because it was given all these other privileges and started executing all these other things that it wasn't supposed to. So we must make sure it's done in a responsible way. At the end of the day, we know that AI drives decision-making, which is a cornerstone of knowledge management, but it is touching areas like criminal justice, loan processing, recruiting, HR, right? This is where it's at now, and the decisions being made in these areas are influenced by AI. And so that delivery of knowledge is already being influenced by AI in these critical areas. Education, emergency response. When certain areas of the country and states and cities call 911, and you wonder why it's taking so long, that AI is telling them, delivering information and knowledge to the emergency response that may be unethical or biased, and say, hey, in this area, you may not want to come right away. Or, you don't know until you peel back the onion, understand what it's doing. Just like the facial recognition programs we talked about earlier, and the bias of the data that's being looked upon there. You don't know sometimes until it's actually being live and in production. And so these are all critical areas. In the legal system, it's using that for jury selection. I mean, it's a lot going on behind the scenes that we need to be aware of when we develop these systems, but then start from an aspect of understanding that data is the key. Getting that diverse team that understands that can point out different societal issues that may come up because of the data being used and or how the algorithm is performing. And so we know that it's critical we are able to understand how the algorithms work and where they are perpetuating systemic bias. And so we can eliminate that early and have a more efficient delivery of knowledge. So did I leave any time for questions? So that's the webinar. Definitely have time for questions. Anyone have questions and comments? And this is my information. People can contact me.
Thank you, Tony. And real quick, we do have a few questions in the chat box, if you don't mind checking that, and we can wrap up with that in the next few minutes.
Okay, chat box. Q for later. Last night on 60 Minutes, there was a discussion about TikTok and the Chinese data mining of its users. They said that they absolutely use AI in their algorithms. I can see the need for AI in business, but I am suspicious of using potentially private data where they live, device info by an app that's supposed to be for entertainment purposes only. It seems that this fits in with ethics, especially of the data. Absolutely. So for one, they're using AI and no, the first thing is data mining its users. Why? They're using AI, but you don't know how. It's not even, they haven't explained how they're using it, or they won't explain how they're using it. And if you're mining the data of your users, it's a lot of data that comes with just that they can tap into from your device. And so yes, this it opens up a lot of unethical and the question of ethicality and a lot of potential for unethical use and bias. Absolutely. That is, I didn't even think about that. So that's one of the reasons that you look at TikTok and applications like that and think twice. Say, well, should I use that? Everybody's having fun doing the videos and everything, but what purpose are they mining the data for? Okay.
Well, and the way that they did it, 60 Minutes, yes, it might be liberal, but they also kind of talked about it from even anybody who's watching it. They're tapping into your data there too. And I just think of all these like teenage kids who think it's great fun, and what information is being captured. It just scares the heck out of me.
Yeah.
And Maddie too.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. Abby said, don't put my data out there.
That's right.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a concern. I mean, you know that as soon as you turn your phone on, you can be tracked, right? And it's a lot of data. If you look at the applications, your banking application, they know, your credit card applications know if you're using that on your phone. Starbucks application. I mean, all that stuff is there. So if you have a company that's tapping into that, that's an issue.
Yeah, please don't take away my Starbucks. You can take my TikTok. Thank you.
All right, I understand.
Yes, indeed. Nectar of the goddesses.
Yes, yeah. Yes, indeed. So another question from Robert: isn't one of the differences between expert systems and AI that the AI can do much more complex correlations that are not really understood by humans? Maybe this can be roughly explainable, but going to get harder as AI. Yeah, absolutely. So expert systems, as you know, Robert, it is a branch of AI, but it's not really talked about as much anymore. Back in the 90s when I was involved with it, because machine learning has pretty much replaced that. And neural nets, because you can do what you were doing back then. And like to your point, it was easier to trace through to understand what paths you were taking and remove those paths and correct them. But as AI gets more sophisticated, there's going to be more challenging to do that. That's why when the things are pointing out to be explainable, you have to have the developers actually in the code reviews go through those paths that they've coded before it's implemented, to walk through those paths to make sure those paths are correct, and then remove those paths at that time. Once you continue that development piece and put it in production, yes, it's going to be much harder. And there are tools that companies have developed to help trace what the AI algorithm is doing. So, yeah, I mean, it's an issue. It's going to be harder, and then you're going to be paying more money for tools to actually help you do that. another Robert question. How do we tell which data are biased and which are actually a skew, and how different personas have acted and performed? Absolutely, that's a great question. That will come from your diverse team, right? And they'll check the data based on, so is this keeping to what we want the algorithm to analyze? Or is this something out of the ordinary, out of what, particularly what we want the algorithm to analyze? Say it passes that point. But then you start to train the algorithm and understand how the algorithm was developed, to then look at, okay, the different paths we just talked about the algorithm takes in order to make decisions on that data. That's the next check. Absolutely, it could fit that persona. It's like, marketing companies. They do a lot of persona analysis. Some people are folks that jump on technology right away. They're the folks that high adopters, and there's some people who just lag, never will adopt anything until it's super on sale. So they're analyzing your shopping habits, and so you want that type of data to be in there, not some other data that really doesn't really pertain to that. So things like that. Understanding that persona is very important. That's a good question. Robert, he got a lot of questions. What do you think that AI will mean for funder impression of KM? Is that funder impression of KM as a discipline, and as something to fund? Will it be AI getting funded with a KM aspect, or KM that is getting funded with the AI aspect? Important discrepancy in the future of holistic KM improvement. That's interesting, because I know that example I gave you with the startup Union Cybernetics. They are working on NLP-based search that gets down to the actual answer when you search, and that is being used as a KM application to understand, to find knowledge. So they're actually being funded. So you will see companies that are blending AI and KM in one area, in one set of funding opportunities, and then there's other with AI, it's pure AI, that's other funding. It all depends on what is the outcome of what you're trying to accomplish. Some applications are focused on the knowledge management piece and leveraging AI, and others ones just the AI piece. But all of these applications in their funding requests have ethical questions to answer, and so those are aspects that are coming up in the funding decision. So hopefully I answered that. Monica, who manages the integration between AI and KM? It from a business perspective, I think you would need to drive it from that area. What are you trying to accomplish from a business perspective to see how you can better deliver knowledge, and if AI will be the catalyst in doing that? And so from a business perspective, they would drive that, but then of course either bringing in a vendor that can facilitate what the business needs from that KM higher order KM knowledge delivery with AI, or bringing in developers and designers and things like that to actually develop it based on, like anything else, the business and the business requirements and needs to be able to deliver something like that. So that is a good question. Who manages the business? Drives it, and the business will have the technical managers involved in making sure that happens, and all through the system development life cycle, from the analysis to design to testing, and then an actual design, development, testing, and release of the product. So hopefully it'll be done in a more iterative fashion, integrating the things that we talked about today to drive that AI and KM implementation. That's very good. Any other thoughts? I must drop. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So I appreciate everybody joining this this webinar. It's been fun delivering this. Again, I wrote the article, AI and Ethics Journal. You guys can search for that and search for the article, AI Ethics and Impact on Knowledge Management. I'd like to thank KMI, Eric, Brandon, and the team for allowing me this platform to talk about this. I enjoy this subject. It's here to stay. AI and KM is coming together. The ethical nature of AI is definitely in question. And you guys had great questions, especially with the TikTok situation. But there's more companies doing those sort of things. And so we have to hold them accountable for our data and what they do with it. So that's extremely important. So I have to thank everybody for coming and participating. Thank you for your time. Eric, back to you.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, much appreciated. And just a reminder to everyone that we'll have the recording for this available. We can send it out to the guest list. And of course, it'll also be hosted at the website. So I can always go to kminstitute.org and hover over the webinar section, and you'll get this webinar and others like it. So thank you again, Tony, for joining us today and for hosting. And thank you, everyone, for being a part of it. And we hope to see you again next time.
Yes, indeed. All right. Take care, everybody.